On a heated New York night, Donald Trump stormed onto Stephen Colbert's stage with a smug grin, ready to crush the DNA scandal once and for all, and mock the host into oblivion. But what started as Trump's revenge tour exploded into the most brutal public takedown in late-night history when Colbert calmly dropped the ultimate bombshell: DNA evidence proving Melania Trump is not Barron's biological mother, leaving Trump frozen, the audience screaming, and the entire country watching in total shock. The studio was packed and buzzing with energy on a crisp New York evening. Bright lights beamed down from every angle, and cameras were positioned around the stage. This wasn't just another episode of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Tonight, the iconic Ed Sullivan Theater in Manhattan had turned into a battlefield. Then the side doors swung open, and Donald Trump stepped in like he owned the place. He flashed that big, familiar grin, waving both hands high like he was kicking off a rally. The audience erupted in a mix of cheers and scattered boos. Trump kept smiling, but his eyes had this sharp, cold glint. Everyone could tell he wasn't here just to chat. He had come to settle the score over that DNA scandal from weeks ago, and he looked ready to fight. Stephen Colbert stood up from his desk with a calm smile, extending his hand. Trump shook it firmly, almost too firmly, then dropped into the guest chair like he was claiming territory. The crowd quieted down a bit, sensing the tension already crackling in the air. Colbert leaned back slightly, looking relaxed, but his voice cut straight through the noise. "Mr. President, welcome back. Before we get into politics, let's talk family for a second. You've been pretty vocal lately about truth and lies, so tell us, what's the real story with your family these days?" Trump let out a loud laugh that filled the whole studio. He pointed right at Colbert, shaking his head like he couldn't believe what he just heard. "Stephen, you're still obsessed with this stuff? Maybe you should get your own DNA tested. Who knows what you'd find out about your own family tree? And by the way, with that hair of yours, I'm surprised you haven't had it checked already." The audience burst into nervous laughter. Some clapped, others just shifted uncomfortably. Trump leaned forward, clearly enjoying the moment, and fired off another jab. "You know, Stephen, if you spent less time digging into my life and more time fixing that boring show of yours, maybe people would actually watch." Colbert didn't flinch. He just smiled politely, letting the laughs die down naturally. The studio felt heavier now, like everyone was waiting for the next punch. Trump sat back, still grinning, but his eyes stayed locked on Colbert like he was daring him to push further. Then Trump raised his hand and pointed straight at the main camera. His voice boomed across the set, full of that signature confidence. "Tonight I'm here to bury the lies once and for all. The fake news, the witch hunts, all of it. We're setting the record straight right here, right now." Half the audience cheered wildly, pumping their fists. The other half stayed quieter, watching closely. The energy in the room split right down the middle. Colbert kept his cool, nodding slowly as the noise rolled over him. Without saying a word, he reached down and picked up a thick folder from his desk. He flipped it open with a deliberate motion, the pages rustling loud enough for the mics to catch. The crowd leaned forward in their seats. Cameras zoomed in tight on the folder. Trump's smile stayed locked in place, but his shoulders tensed just a little. Colbert sat there for a second, letting the tension build just a little more. Then he picked up the thick report from the folder, held it up with both hands, and looked straight into the main camera. His voice was calm but firm, cutting through the studio like a knife. "This document ends the speculation." The room went dead quiet. Colbert opened the report slowly, his eyes scanning the page one last time before he spoke again. "According to this DNA test, Melania Trump is not Barron Trump's biological mother." For 3 full seconds, nothing moved. Trump froze in his chair, his usual smirk completely gone. His face went tight, eyes wide. The audience sat stunned, mouths hanging open. Then the explosion hit. A few people gasped loudly. Someone in the third row actually yelled, "What?" Another woman covered her mouth with both hands. The whole studio erupted in shocked murmurs and scattered shouts. Phones started lighting up as people tried to record what they just heard. Trump finally snapped out of it. He threw his head back and let out a big, forced laugh that sounded way too loud. He pointed at Colbert again, shaking his head like the whole thing was ridiculous. Maybe test yourself next time, Stephen. Who knows what skeletons you've got hiding in your closet? Hell, with the way you keep digging into my family, maybe you're the one who needs a paternity test. He laughed even harder, slapping his knee. And come on, this is the best you've got. Some piece of paper? You're reaching, Stephen. Really reaching. A few people in the audience gave awkward chuckles, but most stayed silent, still processing the bombshell. The laughter didn't land the way Trump wanted. It felt off, like everyone was waiting for something more. Colbert didn't interrupt. He didn't smile. He just sat there quietly, letting Trump's jokes hang in the air, while the weight of the DNA revelation sank deeper into the crowd. The silence from Colbert made the moment even heavier. Then Colbert leaned forward slightly and spoke again, his voice still steady. "Mr. President, before you dismiss this, let me show you something important." He pulled out another sheet from the folder and held it up. "This is the chain of custody document. It shows exactly where the samples came from, who collected them, and how they were handled. The lab is one of the most respected in the country. The DNA is real. The match is 0%. Melania is not the biological mother." Trump's laugh died in his throat. He stared at the paper, his jaw clenching. The audience leaned in even closer, the energy in the room shifting fast from shock to intense focus. Some people started whispering to each other. Others nodded slowly, eyes glued to the documents on the big screens behind the desk. "You expect me to believe this garbage?" Trump shot back, but his voice had lost some of its earlier boom. He gestured at the paper dismissively, but his eyes kept flicking back to it. "Anyone can fake a chain of custody. This is a setup." Colbert didn't raise his voice. He simply slid the document across the desk a little closer to Trump. "The signatures are there, the timestamps, the lab verification. Would you like to call the lab right now and ask them yourself?" The studio fell into another heavy silence. Trump's face turned a shade redder. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked like he was actually cornered by hard evidence. Trump wasn't about to sit there and take it. He pushed himself halfway out of the chair, his face turning red as he raised his voice loud enough for the back row to hear every word. "This is fake news. Total fake news," he shouted, pointing at the report on the desk. "And you, Stephen, you're nothing but a second-rate comedian with a grudge. You've been after me for years, and now you're making up this garbage to get ratings. Sad. Really sad." His voice boomed through the studio. A few loyal fans clapped and cheered, but most of the audience just stared, some shaking their heads. The energy felt electric and uncomfortable at the same time. Trump kept going, waving his hands like he was at a rally. "Nobody believes this stuff. It's all a hoax cooked up by the radical left and late-night hacks like you." Colbert stayed seated, completely calm. He looked Trump right in the eyes and spoke in a low, steady voice that somehow cut through all the noise. "Humor doesn't change DNA, Mr. President." The words landed like a slap. Trump froze for a split second, then jabbed his finger straight toward Colbert's face, inches from his nose. "You think you're smart? You think you can embarrass me on my own terms?" That's when the audience exploded. Half the room started booing loudly, while the other half clapped and cheered. The noise rolled through the studio in waves, shouts, gasps, and applause mixing together. People were standing up in some rows, pointing and arguing with each other. The cameras panned across the crowd, catching the raw split in the room. Trump tried to push through the chaos. He turned toward the audience, spreading his arms wide like he was calling them to his side. "Folks, listen to me. I've built a strong family, beautiful family. We've been through everything together. The campaigns, the White House, all of it. Melania has been an incredible mother to Barron. She raised him right. We've given him the best life possible. Don't let this guy twist the truth." Some people nodded along, but the cheers were weaker now. The DNA bomb was still hanging heavy in the air, and Trump could feel the room slipping away from him. Before he could keep going, Colbert cut in cleanly, his tone sharp and direct. "Mr. President, if Melania is the biological mother, then why does the hospital record show she wasn't even admitted on the day Barron was born?" The question hit like a punch. Trump stopped mid-gesture, his mouth open. The audience went quieter again, leaning forward, waiting for the answer. Trump's eyes narrowed. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out forced. Colbert didn't give Trump any room to breathe. He picked up a small remote from the desk and pressed a button. The big screens behind them lit up with a video. A woman in her late 40s appeared, sitting in a plain room with a Bible in front of her. She looked nervous but determined. "I'm Sarah Klein, former senior assistant to the Trump family during the White House years," she said clearly. "I was there during the time surrounding Barron's birth. I swear under oath today that Melania Trump could not have carried or given birth to Barron. She had serious medical issues at the time that made pregnancy impossible. I saw the medical reports myself." The studio went silent for a beat, then erupted. Gasps and shouts filled the air. People turned to each other, mouths open in disbelief. "No way!" someone yelled from the back. Trump shot up from his chair, face twisted with rage. "Turn that off! Turn it off right now!" he roared, his voice cracking with anger. He pointed at the screen, hand shaking. "That woman is a liar, a paid liar by the Democrats. She's been bought and paid for to smear my family. Fake! All fake!" The video kept playing for a few more seconds before Colbert paused it. Trump was breathing hard, his face flushed red. The audience was split, some booing Trump, others looking stunned and whispering furiously. Colbert stayed completely calm. He reached into the folder again and pulled out a stack of printed emails. "Mr. President, before you call her a liar, here are the internal emails from your own campaign team. Sarah just provided them. They were sent 2 weeks after Barron's birth." He held one page up to the camera. "This one is from your communications director to the family lawyer. It says, and I quote, 'We need to maintain the public story that Melania gave birth naturally. Prepare the cover narrative and make sure no leaks happen.' Signed by your own people." Trump's eyes widened. He stepped forward aggressively toward the desk, slammed his hand down hard on the wood with a loud bang that echoed through the mics. "You're destroying my family on live TV!" he shouted, voice booming with fury. "This is a witch hunt! You're attacking my wife, my son, everything! How dare you!" Half the audience jumped to their feet. The studio exploded with noise, loud boos, angry shouts, and some scattered applause. People were yelling at each other across the rows. "Let him speak," one man screamed. "Show the proof," another woman shouted back. The chaos was raw and loud, cameras swinging wildly to catch the reactions. Colbert remained seated, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. He picked up the email and read the key part out loud in a clear, steady voice that somehow cut through all the shouting. "The cover-up plan must stay tight. Public narrative is non-negotiable. Melania's role as mother must be protected at all costs. This email was sent from inside your inner circle, Mr. President. Not from Democrats, not from fake news, from your own team." The words hung in the air. Trump stood there, chest heaving, staring at Colbert like he wanted to jump across the desk. The audience noise grew even louder. Leo mixed with gasps and arguments breaking out in the seats. Some people were pointing fingers, others recording frantically on their phones. Trump was still standing, chest heaving, his hand pressed hard against the desk. His face was bright red, veins standing out on his neck. The shouting from the audience was still echoing when he lost control for just a split second. "Barron was never supposed to be public anyway," he blurted out, the words flying from his mouth before he could stop them. The entire studio went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the lights. No one moved. No one breathed. Every eye locked onto Trump. The slip hung in the air like smoke. People's mouths dropped open. A few gasped quietly. The weight of what he just said hit everyone at once. Colbert leaned forward slowly, his voice calm but razor-sharp. "So you admit there was a plan to hide the truth?" Trump's eyes widened. He realized what he had just done and tried to backpedal fast. "That's not what I meant. You're twisting my words like always." But Colbert didn't let him recover. He pulled out a second DNA report from the folder and held it up for the cameras. "This is the second test we ran, a comparison between a hair sample from Barron and a confirmed sample from Melania taken in 2017. The result, 0% match. Not even close. Melania is not his biological mother." The new evidence flashed up on the big screens behind them. numbers, charts, and the clear 0% probability in bold red letters. The audience started murmuring again, louder this time, the shock turning into real anger for many. Trump shook his head violently. "This is rigged! All of it!" He pulled out his phone with shaky hands, trying to regain control. "I'm calling my own DNA expert right now, live. Let's settle this once and for all." He dialed the number and put it on speaker. The studio speakers crackled, and a man's voice came through clearly. "Hello, this is Dr. Richard Harlan, DNA specialist." Trump jumped in fast. "Doctor, tell these people that the test Colbert is waving around is fake." There was a short pause on the line. Then the expert spoke, his voice steady and professional. "Actually, Mr. President, based on the samples and documentation provided, the results Colbert presented are accurate. The probability of Melania Trump being the biological mother is effectively 0. The science is clear." Trump's face went pale. He stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. Without another word, he slammed his finger on the screen and ended the call immediately. The dial tone cut off sharply. The audience had seen enough. The shift was total. Suddenly, the whole room turned against Trump. Loud boos erupted from every corner. People stood up, pointing and shouting, "Shame! Liar! Tell the truth!" mixed with angry yells. At the same time, a huge wave of applause and cheers broke out for Colbert. The clapping grew louder and louder, rolling through the studio like thunder. Some audience members even started chanting, "Colbert! Colbert!" Trump stood there frozen, breathing hard, looking around at the sea of angry and disappointed faces. The man who had walked in ready to dominate was now facing a room that had completely turned on him. Colbert sat back slightly, still calm, watching it all unfold without saying another word. Then a man in the 5th row suddenly stood up. He was wearing a simple dark jacket, looked to be in his 60s, and raised his hand high like a student asking to speak. The cameras quickly swung toward him. Colbert noticed and nodded. "Sir, do you have something to add?" The man stepped into the aisle, voice steady but emotional. "My name is Dr. Michael Torres. I was one of the doctors present during the events surrounding Baron Trump's birth. I signed an NDA years ago. But tonight I have to tell the truth. The DNA reports you showed are correct. Melania Trump did not carry or give birth to Baron. The medical circumstances made it impossible. I was there. I saw the records. I can't stay silent anymore." The studio exploded again. This time the shock was even deeper. People gasped loudly. Some covered their mouths. Others jumped up, pointing at the doctor in disbelief. The live confirmation from someone inside the delivery room hit like a final hammer blow. Trump shot up from his chair like he'd been burned. He pointed aggressively at the doctor, then swung his finger toward Colbert. "This is a witch hunt," he screamed, voice raw and shaking with rage. "You're all in on it. Doctors, hosts, fake experts, everyone trying to destroy my family on national television." Before he could continue, Colbert did something he hadn't done all night. He slowly stood up from behind the desk for the first time. He looked Trump straight in the eyes, his voice ice-cold and clear. "No, Mr. President, this is accountability." The two men stood facing each other across the desk. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The audience went wild. Half the room was on their feet now, screaming and arguing. The noise level hit its peak. Boos, cheers, shouts of "Tell the truth" and "Get him out," blending into total chaos. Then the final explosion came. The entire audience rose as one. A massive wave of applause thundered through the studio, louder and longer than anything before. People clapped hard, some whistling, others stomping their feet. The standing ovation rolled on, almost drowning out everything else. Trump stood completely still in the middle of it all, face burning red, breathing heavily. For 5 long seconds he didn't move, just staring out at the sea of people who had turned against him. Then he spun around sharply, turned his back on Colbert and the crowd, and stormed off the stage. His footsteps echoed as he disappeared behind the curtains, chased by a storm of loud boos and angry shouts that followed him all the way out. Colbert stayed standing for a moment, then sat back down. He looked out at the still clapping audience and spoke calmly into the microphone. Truth doesn't need applause. But tonight, it got it anyway. The applause grew even stronger for a few more seconds before slowly dying down. The studio lights felt brighter, the air heavier. The confrontation was finally over. Colbert leaned forward toward the camera one last time, his expression serious but composed. "So what do you think, America? Did Stephen go too far tonight? Or did Trump just prove he had everything to hide?" The big screens behind him switched to a live comment section. Messages started flooding in fast, some shocked, some angry, some cheering. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the show faded out, leaving the question hanging in the air for millions watching at home.